Welcome to Stories with Steve, a podcast on the Central Buna Podcast Network. Every Thursday in 5 minutes or less, we'll lift you up with stories of how God works behind the scenes in our lives. Romans 8:28 tells us that God works all things together for the good of those who are called according to his purpose. Now with an encouraging story, here's Steve.
This is a test of the emergency broadcasting system. If this had been an actual emergency, you would have been instructed on what to do. This is only a test. So I think we've all heard that before, right? But I was just thinking about that. Don't you wish that sometimes in life we had those kind of warning systems before something happens, before trials? You know, I think Job probably wish he had one of those, right? Things just kind of hit you out of the blue. And it's been my experience that a lot of times trials, they happen out of the blue without warning. Well, you know, I had one of those experiences about 4.5 years ago. I was living in the Conroe Woodlands area. I just moved there, had a new position. I was working at a health spa, and a position opened up where I could teach also. And so I was pretty busy for the first couple of weeks there. Things were going just really, really well for me, and I was really excited. And then one day, I started to see these black splotches in my left eye, and I couldn't figure out what was the matter, and I kind of ignored it. I've had floaters before, but this was something different. It almost looked like a bat was flying in through my eye. It was black, and it was noticeable, and I probably should have gone to the doctor that very day, but I put it off. But I remember that night, I couldn't even hardly drive home. It was so dark, and it really scared me. I thought I was going to have an accident, and so I was able to make an appointment the next day and went to the eye doctor, and they did all these tests, and the doctor looked pretty serious at me. I could tell it was something serious was going on. He told me I had a detached retina in my left eye, and I'm like, how did that happen? I didn't have an accident or nothing, but he told me it was pretty severe. But he went ahead and sent me to a specialist, and then the specialist confirmed to me that yes, it was a detached retina, and I was going to have surgery ASAP, or I would risk losing sight in the eye. And so the office there, they tried to make an appointment, and I said, well, right now I don't have insurance. I just started a new job, and they told me it was going to be $7,500 to have this procedure. And I was like, how in the world is that going to work out? I don't have near that much money. I had to pay some out of pocket, but that's what I needed to come up with. And so I just moved there, so I didn't know anybody, but I was able to figure out some resources, a hospital district there to apply for assistance. And day by day, I had to fill out paperwork. I made phone calls, and it just seemed like nothing was happening. And I kept getting pressure from the doctor's office, like, we need to put you on the schedule for next Monday, and we have to have the money before then. I had to have it by 3 o'clock on that Friday, and it was getting very stressful for me. The surgeon actually called me on the phone and said, you know this is serious, right? I said, yes, sir, I know that. I also know you don't want to work with me, right? But I didn't say that. But I'm like, okay, I'm trying to work it out. And so he just said, well, just know that if we're not on the schedule, I can't perform the surgery. And I'm like, at that point, I got really frustrated. I just, emotionally, I felt just drained. I remember sitting in my red Mustang in a parking lot there in the Woodlands. I can exactly remember right where I was. And finally, I just emotionally broke down. I'm not ashamed to admit that I actually cried. I put my head on my steering wheel, and I just started crying. God, I don't understand this. Why did this happen? Lord, you know, I've done the best I can, and I don't know how this is going to work out, but you know, and I just, you know, sometimes people say, yeah, real men don't cry. Well, you know what? That's a lie. You know, Jesus was a real man, okay? They tell us to be like John Wayne. Well, I'd rather be like Jesus. Jesus cried, and he felt everything that we ever will feel, emotion. And so shortly right after that, I got a phone call, told me I'd been approved in the full amount. And I just like, praise God. You know, he came through again. It's almost like sometimes God does that, like at the end, the ninth inning, bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, you know, just sliding into home plate. And there's a song that Toby Mac sang that was popular at that time. It is it may be midnight or midday. He's never early, never late. He's always on time. And that really built up my faith. And I was thinking about that. You know, it is easy to trust God, right? When we can see the outcome. It's so easy. But the Lord was building my faith at that point, and he could have, you know, worked things out sooner, but through that. And I was able to get the surgery, and I had to have some recovery time. I lost some time at work, but God worked it out. But I'm just reminded that in my life that when we go through those trials, sometimes they come out of the blue like that, and we don't understand. But we can be confident that when we go through those situations that he hears our prayers. And sometimes he just wants just to cry out to him, just like I did. And he always comes through. So I wonder if you've ever had an experience like that. Has something ever happened like that in your life, a big trial, and God came through? I'd love to hear your testimony. Feel free to drop me a comment. And always remember, you've got a story to tell.